Good morning, everyone. This is Katie Biagini from the Family Support Network. I am so excited to be with you guys this morning. Today we're going to be talking about self-care, and I'm really excited because this is a topic I'm personally just fascinated by and prioritized in my own life, and we've got a really wonderful person that's going to be joining us in just a minute. First, I just wanted to say hello to any of you that might be new to Family Support Network. Maybe you found this video on YouTube or watching this in replay. Family Support is a local nonprofit here in Greensboro, North Carolina. We serve Guilford and surrounding counties, and our mission is simple. We seek to serve individuals and families as they navigate a NICU stay at Cone Health Women's or at Alamance Regional. And we come alongside families that have a child with a disability or special health care need. To learn more information about us as an organization or to connect with us, you can visit our website, which is www.fsncc.org, or you can send me an email directly, and I'd be happy to connect you with any program you may be interested in. My email is katy@fsncc.org. So before I bring our guest on, I wanted to just read a little bit of her bio to you guys, just to kind of set the table a little bit, and then I will invite her in to this conversation with us this morning. We're going to be joined by Kate Sprinkle. And Kate is a licensed clinical mental health counselor associate. She is currently seeing clients in private practice at Santos Counseling in Greensboro, North Carolina. Kate specializes in working with overwhelmed parents, individuals struggling with anxiety or the impact of trauma, and couples who want to improve their relationship. The approaches Kate integrates into her therapy sessions include person-centered therapy, ACT, CBT, mindfulness, and self-compassion. However, her true passion is in helping stressed caregivers, especially parents of children with developmental or intellectual disabilities. So clearly, she is the perfect person for us to be talking to this morning. So let me go ahead. I'm going to attempt to add you, Kate. Let's see if we can make this work. Yay!
Works. Hi, Katie.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here, Kate. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I'm not sure if you heard me, but this is like one of my favorite conversations to have. So I am so excited to sit at your feet and just learn from you this morning and share you as a resource to our family. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And this is exciting for me because it's kind of my worlds colliding. You know, my passion of being a mom of a special needs child, and then my passion as a professional mental health counselor. So I get to combine those together today, and that's really cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I did a little brief introduction. Really of your like professional background, but I would love to hear from you kind of how you got there. I feel like every counselor has a story of what led them to becoming a counselor. So do you mind kind of sharing that journey with us a little bit?
Oh, sure. So I am the mom of three children who are now teenagers, and my oldest is Roxy, and she's 19 now, and she is our girl with special needs, and I would say that mothering her is what kind of directed my path the most. And so when she was born, we were not aware of the special needs, but around 6 months, we were informed that she had developmental delays, and that began our journey. And so I have been in all of the different boats of, you know, not knowing, not having the diagnosis, scouring the internet for solutions, for help, for next steps, for cures. And then, you know, all of the constant worry, the hypervigilance that comes along with being a parent of a child with a disability or an illness or a special need, and then just all of the feelings that come along with that. And so having all of that, I eventually realized that I needed to seek my own counseling so I could be a better mom. And so I started attending counseling, and um, got a lot of benefit from it myself. And then so it was years later when I decided it was time for me to get back to work when my kids were in school. Decided to go back to school and study counseling myself. And here I am as a professional counselor now and loving to kind of, like I said, collide my two passions of mental health and working with parents with special needs.
That's amazing. And Kate, I know you and I have never met in person before, but I really just from my personal experience and even just in my short interactions with you, I feel like the depth and the empathy that is built through personal experience just sort of sets you aside as a counselor. So very thankful that we have you as a resource in this community and for parents. And that you aren't able to just listen, but are able to offer kind of me too. I've been there. I've walked this
There.
journey
Yes.
too.
Yeah. And I'm always, encouraging people to say, say out loud that it's a struggle, and say out loud that it's how much joy there is in it. But I feel like in our society, a lot of times we want to kind of close down and keep quiet about the struggle part of it. And so I'm telling people to be loud, just, and I'm here to talk about it with people.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, this morning I thought it would be helpful, kind of in theme with it being February and Valentine's Day and all that love conversation that's floating around. But really, I think it's pertinent to our families all year is just the concept of self-care. And I know that this is kind of a buzzword that people are likely familiar with it, but I would love if you don't mind to kind of introduce what self-care is and why you see it as important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. It is kind of a buzzword right now. And that's good and bad. I think a lot more people know that it's out there, but also I think people sometimes equate it with self indulgence or selfishness. And that is absolutely not true. And so I'm always trying to dispel that myth that it's not self indulgence, but self care instead is self preservation. So basically, self care is any act that we do that's going to improve our wellness. And so it can be our physical wellness, our emotional wellness, or our mental wellness. And there are, hundreds and hundreds of ways that anyone can do this. There's no one recipe to do self care. It's individualized to the person, which is both good and bad. It's good because you get to figure out what works for you, but it's bad because some people just want to be told, what's going to work for me? What do I do? But in this case, you're going to have to do a little kind of self work and awareness about kind of what's going to work for you as far as self care goes. But there's four main categories. Let's see, physical, that would be things like taking a walk, taking care of your body, getting enough sleep, drinking water, eating well. Spiritual can include, attending religious services, doing meditation or yoga. Social can be like spending time with friends, going to a support group, anything that involves connecting with others. And then emotional could be journaling or doing art or even going to therapy or counseling. So those are just a few of the ways, but we'll get into more as we talk.
Yeah, and I guess if you don't mind kind of touching, I just feel like because you're a mom who has been there, this is so helpful. But as a mom myself, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about like I don't know. I think for me, sometimes when I think about self care, it feels like a luxury. I have two kids, and one of them has some challenging behaviors, and the other is 9 months old. So I think sometimes when I think about self care, especially when I engage with our families who are either just coming through a traumatic experience or have an ongoing journey as a parent of a child with a disability or rare disease
Mm-hmm.
that requires so much of them day in and day out, how do you prioritize that? How do you kind of not call that luxury and say this is necessity?
Yeah.
Have you done that in your own life?
so difficult, and it's kind of an up and down journey for me, probably for most people. But I think educating yourself about it is the first step. Understanding that, um, when you are dealing with something that's really overwhelming or stressful or traumatic, your fight or flight system is going to be activated. And self care is a way of deactivating that. It's going to kind of be a way of calming that system, kind of reactivating other parts of your nervous system that are going to be more helpful so that you are better able to care for others. So, the same old metaphor that we've all heard before about putting on your own oxygen mask before you put on the oxygen mask for someone else on an airplane in the event of an emergency. So this is kind of the same sort of thing where you need to be caring for yourself so that you're better able to care for others. And so first understanding that is really important, and just reminding yourself of that can be important. And also scheduling it into your day or your week or your month can be a really great strategy, because we tend to deprioritize it because we're dedicated parents and we have work and other responsibilities, and so we have a lot going on. So sometimes just scheduling it in, it can be really simple things like setting a reminder on your phone to drink water throughout the day, or setting a reminder to go to bed at a certain time. Just little things in your day, and then maybe scheduling something in your week that you really enjoy. If it's, like for me, I love yoga, so I might schedule yoga into my week just to make sure I'm going to get it in. And then there might be things that you like to do on a monthly basis, like meeting a particular friend, or getting a massage, or just something. Putting it on the calendar can be really helpful. Let's see, and also getting support from friends. So whether that's, doing one of these activities with a friend, or enlisting the friend to keep you accountable, and the friend can check in on you and see how you're doing. But it's also great fun to have someone to do it with you. And I think discovering what really matters to you, because that is going to be a motivating factor. If you're deciding, okay, I'm going to run 3 miles 3 times a week. Well, if you hate running,
I was going to say that's not mine. I'll tell you right now.
it might work out for you. So, really thinking about what matters to you, like what motivates you, what helps you, is going to be important. Being realistic is also important. We have a lot going on, so you don't want to kind of overcommit, because then you might just feel disappointed, right? So maybe starting small and just really thinking about how it's going to work out, and then also just really not beating yourself up if you don't meet your goals, um, because life is hard. So use self-compassion and just be like, I'm doing my best. I'll try to do X next week, and it's okay that I didn't get it done. So it's okay that you're not meeting your goals. The point is that you're becoming aware. And so maybe slowly making progress, and that's great. And some weeks are better than others, some days or months are better than others. So don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned friendship, because I know that that's part of self care, but also I feel like for me that's been built in accountability, to check in on one another. And if you're a parent of a child, and this, that has a disability or challenging behaviors in our case, if you're able to have friendships and kind of people in your life that understand, and maybe also have that shared experience, I've been able to do like just hour swaps with friends before. Like, I'm gonna go practice self care for an hour, and if you'll watch my kid, and then we can swap because we trust each other with one another's kids. Um, and then I guess the other thing that comes to mind for me is just, how would you say this has been impacted by the pandemic? I feel like the isolation factor, and not being able to get outside the house. Have you seen that impact, as a counselor, people's ability to practice self care?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And myself has impacted my own self care. I mean, I think for everybody, we're impacted by that. And I think it called on us to kind of dig down into our creativity, finding new and different ways to do self care. I know, for instance, during the pandemic, I started doing jigsaw puzzles. Wasn't something I really had done much of before, but I just found that it was really relaxing, and just felt it was something I really liked, and that I could do it in my own house. And
Right.
So just kind of finding new ways and new ideas, and also having self-compassion, saying, this is a really hard time we're going through, and just being patient with yourself and understanding that it's normal and natural that, you've not been prioritizing your self-care during this time.
Mm-hmm. Oh goodness, this conversation is right up my alley. I have no idea. So would you teach me or tell us, I guess, a little bit just about, as a mother, like what having your daughter and parenting your daughter has taught you about yourself and about your need for self care. I know we touched on that a little bit, but
Yeah. I think it's taught me like we all have strengths, whether, even when we're struggling really, really hard, and we might feel like we're failing as a parent. We're not. We're doing so much right. And I've learned to give myself credit for little things that happen throughout the day and try not to focus, on the negative so much. And that's something that I've had to kind of learn over time, and it's something that I work on with a lot of my clients because it's such a natural thing. We call it negativity bias, where all of our attention focuses on the negative. It's so hard for us sometimes to see all of the positive, even though there's a lot maybe in our lives. So that's just a practice that I've developed over time, something that I work on with my clients. I've also learned the power of acceptance and just kind of letting go of expectations, because I know, like, as a parent, I kind of thought my life would look different. So that was something that took me some years of therapy to kind of get to that point where I was, but it's such a freeing and powerful thing to have acceptance. And that's something else I work on with a lot of my clients. I think humor is something that I've developed as a parent, and it's just something that we have to use in our family, in our home, just sort of as a survival mechanism. We just sometimes have to laugh because it just makes us feel a lot better. And I think reaching out for support was something that initially was hard for me, and I think it's hard for a lot of people. We're always taught to be independent and do it ourselves, find our way on our own. But I've learned through this journey that support is necessary, and that doesn't mean you're weak. And it's going to be super helpful. And then, really, in the end, it's going to help your child, which is your goal as a parent.
absolutely. And I guess, you know, when I think about self care, and we talked about self preservation and kind of putting the oxygen mask on first for yourself, so you're better able to be attuned to your kids. I have such a heart for our SIP Shops program and for siblings of children with a disability or who've experienced trauma or NICU stay. What does it look like as a parent to kind of teach your kids about self-care and find opportunities for them to practice self-care?
Yeah, first I would say it's really important to model. And so that means showing your kids and talking about how what you're doing, how it's self-care for you. So kind of being honest and open about that is really important, because sometimes we kind of just go through our lives doing our things, and we don't really express, especially to children, what it is that this is doing for us and how it's making us feel better and it's creating wellness. So that's one thing I would say. Um,
Or I'm honestly, as a mom, I think sometimes you prioritize your kids' health and well-being above your own. So that's a really important note to make, that it's also important to show this isn't just useful for you. This is
yeah,
useful for, yeah, for my
yeah.
parent.
And I think, helping your child, just like you might do for yourself, helping your child understand, like, what are my interests, um, what do I do that might be considered self-care? What could I integrate into my life that could be self-care? And there's so many different great ways to do it with kids. And I think sensory activities can be a good one. Like, I remember a few years ago when the slime was really popular. Did you ever have the slime at your, that was like
Yeah,
such
all the sensory things in our house, Kate.
slime
Yeah.
was great, like sensory activity, also self-care for kids. Anything sensory though really is so awesome. Like bouncing is a big thing that we use with my daughter. She loves to bounce, and so that can just help her, regulate and just feel excited when she needs to. And knowing what kind of music they might enjoy, like what music makes them feel calm or what music makes them feel happy, that kind of thing, like making playlists maybe with them for different kinds of moods. And it's kind of a fun activity. And then of course knowing, like, what's their favorite show. Sometimes it's fun to just unwind and watch, your favorite program. My daughter Roxy loves Elmo, and we call him Saint Elmo because it's literally a miracle. She will be in the worst mood and she hears Elmo, and it's like it all melts away. So, um, but just having those awareness about, what works, and helping your child figure out what works for them, and understanding that, there are things that you can do to help yourself feel better, to feel calmer, to feel more ready for bed, or to make yourself feel a little happier. But yeah, I think it's empowering for them, but also important to see that mom or dad is doing it too, also.
Right, right. I love that. I think that's such an important note for myself. That's a really good reminder. One of the things we've started to incorporate in our day, and my daughter is still really young, she's only 6, but at dinner is to ask about highs and lows. What was the high of your day and what was the low of your day? And when we first started doing that, it was just for her. We were just trying to ask her about her school day. And over time, I realized, like you were talking about modeling, the importance of us being open with our kids about what our highs are and what our lows are. And yeah, and I love too when you were talking about exploring for yourself what your self care could be, or what is most beneficial for you. Kind of like exploring that with our kids and helping them find the words for their own needs and what's helpful to them. That's also so helpful. So, what would you say as a parent of a child with a disability? What has been a roadblock for you? What has been a challenge to finding self care? I know we talked about, um, just the need for prioritizing it and setting it aside, and that sometimes we view it as a luxury. Were there seasons in your life where you found that to be especially difficult? How did you overcome that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, it ebbs and flows. There's maybe months or years where I feel like I'm really prioritizing my self-care, and then sometimes I'll start to slip, and it can be hard to get back onto the self-care wagon again. But I encourage people to do small things. Like literally, sometimes my self-care is taking deep breaths during my day when I notice that I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed. Just pausing for literally 60 seconds and taking like 4 or 5 deep breaths, and just letting myself feel that calm, and just taking that minute. That is actually self-care. It sounds like such a small act, um, but just understanding that it doesn't have to be a situation where you're finding a sitter or someone to care for your child for 2 hours so that you can leave the house and do something. And while that's great, that's not always possible, especially every day or every week. So finding and just understanding that there are ways to integrate it into your life in small ways that are either free or very inexpensive, don't require you to leave your house or your office, wherever you are. So I kind of try to raise that awareness with people. And also just knowing, yes, it is difficult. It sounds easy, but it's difficult. So I think the saying goes like that, it's simple but not easy. So yes, self-care is simple, but it's not easy to actually get it done. So having said that, remembering to be compassionate with yourself, if you realize you're forgetting to do it, and also knowing that you might feel guilty when you do decide to do it, especially like the times that maybe you do decide to leave the house and do something on your own, and recognizing that you're feeling guilty about it, and just kind of, sitting with that feeling and just reminding yourself that you're doing this, for your own wellness and so that you can be a better parent or caretaker.
Hmm. That is so important. I feel like especially as women, that mom guilt thing is strong. It's
Mm-hmm.
strong. So, um, so could we connect, if you don't mind, kind of how you see therapy connecting to self care? How do you think those two things go hand in hand?
Yeah, absolutely. They have so many similarities. The goal of therapy is to increase wellness, which would be the same goal of self care, right? So, therapy is more really focused on mental health and emotional wellness, but those are threads that also are weaved into self care, and self care is often an intervention that I use with my clients in therapy. And so actually, if you're doing it in your own life, you're kind of giving yourself free therapy by doing these things. It's a way of doing therapy throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your month for yourself. It's a therapeutic intervention. And having said that, going to counseling every once in a while is a great way to check in with yourself and with the counselor, to talk about what's going on and maybe kind of bounce ideas and, figure out ways to remove the barriers and the roadblocks, because those are going to come up, whether it's, the difficulty of, finding the time or motivation, whatever it is. It can be helpful to have someone to talk to you about what's going on with that. So I think that can be important, but just reminding yourself to take care of yourself is really what it comes down to. And then just finding support in whatever way that you feel like you need so that you can get that done.
Do you find, I feel like this has come up a lot for me in conversations with people, so I'm curious from your seat, if you have kind of found the same, but just roadblocks that people have to getting to therapy, stigmas that maybe they have, or I feel like often in conversations with people, I find that therapy is sort of set aside as like a last resort for them. Like when I'm really at the end, then I'll seek that. And it's less so seen as maybe by society as a whole as putting the oxygen mask on before you're at the end. So yeah, I'm curious from your perspective if you have kind of confronted that same like misinformation or stigma.
Oh yeah, the stigma is so real, and I think it's becoming less so a little bit at a time, but it's still there, absolutely. And I think people are reluctant. People aren't sure what it's going to be like or feel like, and I try to um, ensure people, to think of it as a conversation with a purpose. We're here to work together to help you. So um, hopefully that will feel good for them and, be something that they feel like they'd be willing to try out. And now with the availability of telehealth, I think more people than ever are able to access therapy, even if they don't have the time or the resources to actually get to an appointment. So that's been really exciting to see, that's come as a result of this pandemic, which is great. And hopefully that'll continue.
Yeah, agreed. Um, well,
Like I had
that's
a client the other day on telehealth, holding her infant baby like in her arms during, so I could see the baby on the computer. And so it just makes it a lot easier for people no matter what their situation.
yeah. My therapist actually for the beginning of the pandemic, I was able to hop on after bedtime from the comfort of my bed. I was like, this is wonderful. As an introvert, this might even be preferred than before the pandemic. So um, yeah, so I we've talked through a lot of the questions I know we had set aside, and one of the things I'll share with all the people watching, that Kate has done for us is she created a document for us about self-care. It has some tips. Do you mind kind of walking us through that just a little bit, Kate, what they could expect?
Sure.
And my plan is to download that as a PDF and share that with everybody that watches in replay. The majority of the people that view these videos watch it on YouTube or on our Facebook page. So I'll make sure to tag it along there.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I just tried to make it just a 2 page or 1 page front and back. And the front page has a list of just some common self-care options. So I've talked about a lot of them, anything from breathing to yoga to meditating and other things like, daydreaming, turning off your cell phone, cooking or baking, doing a hobby like knitting or sewing, or doing artistic creative endeavors, painting or drawing, and also like spending time with our animals. I don't think people sometimes don't think about that as therapy, but I know for me, I have a dog, and it's very therapeutic just to hang out with my little dog. And also just learning to express gratitude. I think having an attitude of gratitude, as we say in our house, can be just another way to integrate self-care into your daily life. And just taking a seat. I think sometimes as a parent, especially as moms, we're always on our feet, just going, going, going. So give yourself permission, sit down for a minute or two, take some deep breaths, just do nothing, literally do nothing. So I think it's sad to say that we have to give ourselves permission for that, but I think we really do. I think we need to understand that that can be important for us to take those moments for ourselves. And then on the back of the paper, it just kind of tells you a little bit more, a lot of what we've talked about today. What is self-care? Trying to help you figure out what might work for you, and so what are the self-care basics as far as like keeping your um, healthy, and physical wellness as best they can be. And I like to say when I talk about this part, because we always emphasize sleep as really important, but as a special needs mom, I know that sometimes sleep isn't something that I can control a lot of the time. And so that's just another thing that I've had to accept, and how can I help myself get more sleep even when I don't know how long I'll be able to stay asleep. So that's something I've had to think through too. So just being aware that if you see it sleep on here, don't feel like, well, I can't do that. Um, that's come up for me too. Totally get it. So
For me, I think, and I know, a lot of the families that are involved with family support are single parents, and so I know they lean heavily on friendships and extended family for this. But in our marriage, I feel like that communication of what our needs are, or I did not sleep because our child has some sleep disorders. Um, yeah, communicating I need a nap and not feeling guilty about that can go a long way. I think that's really what struck me most about the forum that I'll share of yours with everyone, and really your advice today is that it doesn't have to be these like grandiose steps. We don't have to jump to the mom retreat for a week. We can start with breathing or like sitting down. Um, and that feels a lot more realistic. And like you can feel like you're being successful when those are your starting points as opposed to something much grander. So I really, really appreciate that. Um, well, as we kind of start to wrap things up, I'll encourage anyone tuning in live to add a question below, and I'll make sure we cover that. But is there anything else you wanted to share, Kate, that we haven't covered yet?
um, well, I think one thing that kind of helps sometimes for people, because some people say, well, how do I know if it's really helpful for me, if this is actually self-care?
Right, if it's working. Yeah.
What you can do is to evaluate using a 1 to 10 rating system. Like before you do the activity or the practice or whatever it is, you can rate your distress level on 1 to 10, how you're feeling.
Mm.
And then after you're done, rate it again. So you can see if your distress level has come down. And that is a good way of being able to see, okay, this works for me. And having said that, sometimes something will work for a while and then it'll stop working, and that's fine. We just have to kind of readdress, okay, what is it that I need now? What's going to be helpful for me now in this moment? But that's a good meter of telling if something is working for me. And another thing to know is that if we were to map on a graph about how self-care is helpful for us, like one self-care activity, I think they call it the law of diminishing returns. So it looks like an upside down U.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to go up as you're often for the duration that you can do any activity. But then there's going to be a peak where you're going to come back down. And so the easiest way to understand this is about watching TV. So it can feel really relaxing, and it's great to just relax at the end of the day and watch TV. But then sometimes after we get to a certain point, I don't know how many hours that would be for any particular person. If it's 2, 3, 4, you're going to start coming back the other side, because then you're going to start feeling blah, right? And like you haven't done anything. And so then you're
All
coming
parents listening are nodding their heads. Yes.
back down. So just
Yeah.
being aware of, like, too much of anything can sometimes actually, not be very helpful. So just being aware of that too.
It's really helpful. I'm such a visual learner, and as a parent, we've worked with an OT for so many years that a lot of my parenting correlates with making visual cues and stuff for our daughter. That even thinking of that scale that you mentioned, I'm picturing, wouldn't it be awesome to kind of incorporate like a physical scale with our kids as we help them develop what their like most beneficial self-care acts are.
Mm.
So that's a really, really helpful tip for me, even to take away. Kate, how do people find you? I'll make sure to include, all your information and stuff when we post this. But how do people connect with you as a counselor and on Instagram to follow you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, on Instagram, I'm counseling with Kate. So you can find me there, or I am with Santos Counseling, and that's online at santoscounseling.com. Or you can, if you look online on Psychology Today, is one of those big databases of counselors. You can just look for Kate Sprinkle, and I should come up on that, or on Good Therapy. I'm on like 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds of um, therapy databases. So people can find me that way too. But also my email address is kate@santoscounseling.com, and that's SANTOSCOUNSELING.com.
Perfect.
And it's
Well,
Kate with a K.
yeah, I will make sure to add your email, your website, and your Instagram handle so people can find you and connect with you, and maybe meet with you
Mm-hmm.
as a client. Maybe they've never been in counseling before. So I really, really, all of us appreciate your time and your insight, personally and professionally. And um, I just know we've had so many families circle back to us that watch, conversations and replay from all over the place, and how it's helped and served them. So um, yeah, I just thank you so much for your time. Really
I'm
appreciate it.
so happy to be here. Just very passionate about this topic too. So I was happy to hear that you love it as well.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be brainstorming other topics for us to hop on and chat about. So you do the
Awesome.
same, and we'll hopefully get you back here soon. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I would just encourage you today to try to come up with one small act of self care as a starting point. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.